We often have people ask us, well, what defines a MIL-SPEC case? And unfortunately, that's another one of these terms that very often gets misused. People sometimes appropriate that to describe their case to imply that it is a high quality, but in turn, there are a variety of MIL-SPECs. Some of the MIL-SPECs have many categories within them. A lot of them deal with divergent issues, so it's very unlikely that you could have anything that resembles a case that doesn't meet some criteria of some MIL-SPEC. However, the things that are implied that are there that separate the military case from the civilian world is the concern about moisture, the concern about a range of temperature tolerance, and concern about rougher handling, and concern about longer term storage. So there are military specs that deal with some of those areas individually. There are some that try to combine them. So, without getting lost in the weeds, on the moisture side, for example, it could be as basic as just shedding water without it causing damage. It could step up a little bit where it could be subjected to a salt or fog mist test to stimulate the idea that if you have things that are ocean bound or being used near the ocean and for a period of time, that you could count on that case to protect the contents from damage from the salt water vapors or salt water contamination. It would step on up then to a gasketed case that actually has a sealed gasket that is so-called immersion proof. And then you would have different levels or different depths that you would expect it to stand up to if it were actually immersed. Now in turn, when you create that case, you've got a situation now where a differential in air pressure as small as 1 pound over a larger case could easily generate several hundred pounds of force. So if you put that on an aircraft, for example, where the cargo hold pressure at high altitude may be several pounds difference, you could be setting yourself up for an explosion if air is trapped in that case and the plane is climbing, or you could be setting that case up for a collapse if the air bleeds out of it and then you come down into the area of higher pressure. So there's nothing short of a bank safe can stand up to some of those pressures. So we we always have some mechanism for air relief, and that's a so-called pressure relief valve. And again, depending on the nature of the mission, these valves are, would of course exclude water, but they generally will allow air to pass around 1/4 to 1/2 pound of air differential. But there's another aspect of that totally outside of those safety and collapse issues, and that is long-term storage. If I got something stored long-term, the normal temperature cycling that goes on with just about any environment means that warm air expands, cool air compresses. So as this container cycles through those temperature changes, and of course those are aggravated in a shipping environment. But as they go through those cycles, air is going in and out. So cool air comes in, moist air comes in and hits a cool object, condensation occurs. The liquid droplets don't necessarily go out when the cycle changes and air goes out. So sometimes you literally can build up condensation inside a case if there's frequent air exchange. So we utilize the pressure relief valve to cut way down on the routine movement of air in and out of the case. So it only happens usually if the case is being physically handled and going through temperature extremes during a transportation cycle. Other tests, of course, involve sand, dirt, grit. Other things that come into military spec are handling. We have to assume that our troops might be exposed to chemical, biological, or radiological circumstances where they have to stay with protective clothing, or they're operating in frigid Arctic environments where they have to work with gloves and mittens. We need to be sure that the handles of latches are accessible when people are wearing the protective clothing. In some circumstances, we need to be assured that the case itself has hardware that not just stands up to the normal issues of rain or saltwater corrosion, but goes a step further and will withstand the harsh chemicals that are used to clean any potential exposure to radioactive, biological, or chemical elements. So you can imagine that the cleaning regimen to make sure that something is now neutralized utilizes harsh chemicals. So for that reason, we're generally going to high grades of stainless steel or a level of coating that can stand up to that decontamination process. The other things, of course, that can relate in military spec are huge issues as far as labeling. We may obviously want to let people know that this is a 2-person or a 4-person lift in order to meet the ergonomic standards for it. We may have hardware included that allows them to safely attach a lifting harness. Or conversely, we may have hardware that allows a larger item to be secured by the loadmaster in a cargo aircraft. So we don't want them to necessarily hook that into a handle that wasn't designed to withstand that. We want to label that so that loadmaster knows that there's a special ring device there that's intended to be used for that purpose. Again, in military spec world, very often the cases need to be color coded for different applications, or depending on the theater of involvement, sometimes the specifications just simply call out acceptable colors. I mentioned earlier stainless steel hardware. Very often that hardware needs to be treated in some fashion so it's not shiny or reflective to cause problems if you're using it in a hostile environment where that reflection could expose you to bad things. So again, a whole plethora of different military specs. We have a lot of expertise in that arena, but most important, through our case shell suppliers, we have access to a lot of the people that were actually consulted when these were written and as they've been updated. So we'll be most happy if you have a contract requirement to look at those. And unfortunately, a lot of people who compose military contracts are not familiar with some of the subclauses and some of the other questions that needed to be asked. And we can help you go back and try to get clarification that you need, because just the difference of one or two phrases like that could easily be hundreds of dollars in difference in the case cost and could compromise other operational aspects of that case. It might cause unnecessary weight or complexity that could draw away from the function of it.